Great. I think we can get started. So, welcome everyone to the second edition of Hevo's Learning Lab. Thank you for joining us. We're very glad to see you all. Today we have Cade with us. He's a member of the sales engineering team at Hevo Data. He'll be taking us through the internal architecture of Hevo. We'll be having the webinar for the first 30 minutes. After that, Cade will answer any questions that you've left in chat. With that, I think, Cade, you can go ahead.
All right,
Thank
sounds
you.
good. Awesome, thank you, Haley. Hi everyone, thanks for joining. Very excited to hop in here and show you guys our Hevo architecture, take you through the platform a little bit, then have some Q&A. So, like mentioned, I head up our sales engineering team here at Hevo. I've been with the company for a few months. Before that, I've had about 10 years of experience in startup land, different sorts of companies, and then the last 5 years before Hevo, I was with Fivetrans. So, early employee there, helped build out their sales engineering team. So, really love the ELT, ETL landscape and chatting about data. So let's get into this. So our agenda today, we're going to talk about issues we've all experienced with building in-house pipelines and why automated pipelines are great. Again, going through Hevo's architecture, doing a product demo, and then really quick Q&A there at the end. So if you have any questions, definitely drop them in the chat and we can hopefully address those towards the end of the call. So starting with a prevailing question, maybe why a lot of us are here, why do we need automated data pipelines? So here's the struggle kind of going through the process of building in-house pipelines and doing all of this yourself. So building data pipelines, to be honest, a lot of people, they kind of get pulled into this trap of, hey, building data pipelines isn't that bad. I found a thread on Reddit and someone else did it. All you got to do is move data from point A to point B. What's hard about that? But you can easily overlook that in some of the nuances that go into it. So understanding business needs. Are you actually pulling all the data that the business actually requires you to grab? Writing API calls. For any technical person, this is probably the easiest part, but you got to think about those nuances in there. How are you going to handle 429 errors, rate limits? Is this your Salesforce instance? Are other tools and resources pulling from that API? Data validation check. You got to, obviously very important. You got to make sure that that data is correct, that's actually being pulled over. Security, can't forget that. This is a lot of times there's going to be personal information, PII, PHI. Are you handling all of this in a very secure way? And then you got to test and deploy this. So going through all that, like I mentioned, in a lot of cases, that's the easy part. Hey, I'm a great engineer. I can build this stuff, but here's where a lot of it falls over is building this yourself. Pipelines can become very brittle, and this is the tedious part of it. Managing schema changes. Did somebody go into your production database and add a new column? Did you account for that? Did you know that was going to happen? Did those changes persist and flow down to your BI layer? If not, then you could be reporting on stale data and you're going to have lots of issues, or maybe your pipeline just breaks altogether. New data requests. Hey, going back to that first point, understanding your business needs. Are you pulling the data that is actually needed and required? Adding resources for scalability. Is your data growing? Have you provisioned the way that you wrote your scripts and how you're pulling this data? Did you do that in a way that's going to automatically scale once you are hopefully pulling in more and more and more data? Versioning and deprecation. My personal favorite part of managing ETL pipelines, when Meta, Instagram, Facebook, they decide to change their API and not inform anyone, or you have version deprecation. Different features are available, different ways that APIs are handled. So you have to go in and actually understand and keep track of these things on an ongoing basis. And this becomes very tedious. You have to stay on top of this stuff and maintain it. And then handling errors and monitoring. You have to be on top of this stuff and do all of this yourself. Are you going to set up alerts and monitoring and data quality checks on all of your pipelines? If not, then the initial part of building these pipelines, great, that was fun and easy, but now you have the real task of maintaining them. So instead of doing that, use a platform like Hevo, where you have automated data pipelines. The data is going to be moving over real time. It's adaptable. It's going to automatically handle those schema changes. We're responsible for making sure that we're updating APIs with those deprecation scheduled for SaaS applications. We're up to the latest versions for drivers, for databases, and so on. So we're responsible for doing that for you. All you have to do is set up these pipelines and then start using that data downstream, and then lower total cost of ownership. Do you want your data engineers constantly doing data plumbing in there, doing that tedious work, updating, fixing pipelines? If it's at the end of the quarter, you have some key reports that you need to get done, and you realized, oh, we missed a deprecation schedule for a specific SaaS application or our CRM. Who's going to go in and figure? So at that point, you're scrambling. You have to go in, fix these pipelines, and update them from a management standpoint. And that gets tough. You're pulling your key players away from their primary roles and responsibilities, and that's delivering value from the inside standpoint. So again, don't get your team and your data engineers stuck doing data plumbing when they could be actually gaining insight from the data and putting it to use for you and your company. So given all that, let's dive into Hevos architecture. So a lot of key things to chat about here. I'll call out a few areas towards the end as I'm walking through some of these specific parts, but we'll just take a linear view, go left to right, and talk through all the different parts of the platform here, and what makes automated ETL and what makes something like Hevos platform so great. So starting with the source side, where it always starts. So it's actually a big change in the modern data stack in the paradigm, the standardization of SaaS applications. So this allowed us to build pipelines for, say, Salesforce or HubSpot, MongoDB, that we can deploy across all of our customers and maintain in a central place. So from a source perspective, you've got your databases, files, SaaS applications, and events, things like webhooks. So for the most part, these are always going to be pull connections. You're going to authorize access for Hevo to make a secure connection to those source systems. Those databases obviously understand there might be IP whitelisting involved, different network connection options. Hevo supports all those to make sure that we're securely connecting to those sources. I understand that's in a lot of cases that's your lifeblood. So I want to be a good client to those applications, and then extracting that data, and then same for SaaS applications, connecting over TLS and secure connection methods for files, and webhooks going with those inbound connections. So once we've made that source connection, we start doing an initial historical sync. So starting at the top, pulling all the data that is currently residing in that source, so we get a full replication of that to the destination. And then concurrently and ongoing from that, we're doing incremental CDC. So we're capturing those changes. Again, even during the initial historical sync, we realize life doesn't stop when it's like, hey, let's just stop the business while we're doing this historical sync. That doesn't happen. The historical sync needs to happen concurrently while those changes are happening. So we're capturing and persisting those changes to the destination as well. So this all happens using Kafka. So we use Kafka and to make these connections, and dedicated Kafka streams for our customers, and then the data is coming over as topics, and we're processing that as it's going through Hevo. So we've got the source side, and we've got the connection. Data is coming over via Kafka. What's going on in Hevo? So with Hevo, we're primarily hosted on AWS and GCP. So you have that option to select that when you're setting up your account. And then once the data gets into our cloud, again, this is we get this question a lot, especially as you go up market and work with mid-market and enterprise level companies. Like, hey, what do we download? What do we install? What do we have to do on our end? And the answer is nothing. It's a SaaS platform. There's nothing to install. This isn't some old school local agent that's running. You got to configure. It takes a long time. You got to set up a whole lot of stuff. You don't have to do that with Hevo. It's all fully managed, ETL. And then once the data actually reaches Hevo, we're going to start processing it through our pipeline. So one of the first things that we're going to do is a little bit out of order here, but we'll get into this, is doing schema mapping. So automatic schema mapping. I mentioned this earlier. What happens when your schema changes? What if you change a column name, you add a column, delete a column? You don't have to worry about that with Hevo. All you have to do is turn it over to us. We infer the schema that we detected from the source. We map that to an internal Hevo type, and then we're going to ultimately map that to the most appropriate destination type. And then even if the data type changes on the source side, we'll continue to we'll capture those changes and persist that to the destination so that we losslessly support whatever data type is actually coming over and whatever those changes were. And then you don't have to worry about what happens if you deleted that column, those DML changes. All that's going to automatically be handled by Hevo. But one of the great things about the Hevo platform as well is you can do custom schema mapping as well. So the vast majority of our customers, they love the automatic schema mapping. They don't want to go. They have 16,000 tables or something like that in a database instance. You don't want to go through and map all those. That's tedious. But every now and then there's that one table. Maybe you have a specific way that you want that data handled downstream in Snowflake or BigQuery, and you want to do that custom mapping or a specific table that you're already mapping that to. Hevo allows you to do that. So it is automated ETL, but you do get a little, you get some functionality in there. You get some knobs and dials to tinker with. And no data engineers typically love that. They don't want to be locked in and just told, hey, this is what's best for you. This is exactly how you do it. We have recommendations, and for the most part, we want to take all of this work off your plate. But we also understand that every now and then you have something really specific that you need to be able to do, and Hevo enables that. So you can do custom schema mapping with Hevo. So map it to specific types, specific columns, and so on. So it's a really great balance between the automated functionality that we have and the ability to do just some slight customization to meet your specific needs. And then data transformation. Along those same lines, we do follow the paradigm shift that happened, the last 7-8 years in the modern data stack since the advent of Redshift. We follow that paradigm shift of doing ELT. So really focusing on the extracting and loading, making a faithful replication of that source data to the destination so that you have all the data available to you. But we also have included the ability to do some light preload transformations using Python. So this is really straightforward if you need to, let's say, do some preload aggregations, or maybe drop a column, mask a column, and so on. You can do that functionality right within the Hevo platform using these preload transformations with Python. So again, it's that little bit of extra functionality that's there for you if you need it. Most people are just going to follow that EL paradigm shift and just move all that data and do those transformations in the destination. But every now and then you have that specific requirement, and Hevo helps you with that. And another great part of it, the compute happens on our end. The script doesn't have, the data doesn't make it to the destination. This is happening within Hevo's platform. So the compute's happening with us to run those Python scripts. And all you have to do is tell us what the script is that you want to run. So great. So we've got the data, we're processing it, doing schema mapping, applying any preload transformations that we may need. And as it's flowing through Hevo, we do have automatic failure resolution. So we have something, a concept called sidelining. So we can sideline data if something goes wrong, maybe we're not able to handle an error that occurred, or the destination may be down. So we sideline that data and automatically have retry logic built into the platform. So we can continue to retry that data, and then we'll raise an alert to you letting you know that something went wrong there. So automatically handling that and retrying. And then further downstream, so we've transformed the data, done the schema mapping, done light massaging, processing of the data, and now we're, hopefully y'all can't hear folks doing lawn work, but and now we're actually going in and we're getting set to write the data to the destination. So here we're going from Kafka, dropping that data into files, and that's dependent on the destination, either S3 or Google Cloud Storage, dropping that data as a file to S3, and then writing it to the destination, doing a final merge operation. So that's writing there, and you can determine how often you want Hevo to actually write that data to the destination. But on the source side, specifically with databases, using Kafka, one of the big features that we've talked about is real time. So getting into this, on the source side, we're not actually doing batches like some other ETL processes do, where they spin up a sink, it pulls data, and then processes it and then loads it to the destination. With Hevo and using Kafka, we're constantly consuming the logs from the source databases and processing those through Hevo. Eventually, we do sort of set a bookmark and load that data to the destination, but from the source side, that data is constantly being pulled. So we're keeping up with whether it's a replication slot in Postgres or your bin logs in MySQL, keeping an eye on that data, pulling it continuously into Hevo, and then processing it through our pipelines, and then doing some of that light massaging, schema mapping, applying any of those preload transformations that you may want to do, and then loading that into the destination there. So again, that enables us to be a lot more efficient and quicker in extracting that data and making sure that we're losslessly capturing all those logs and events that are changing and happening in your surely very busy production database. Next, again, we talked about that adaptability. You're not just stuck in some black box of a platform that tells you, hey, this is exactly what you can do, this is what you can't do, and there's no wiggle room around here. And we understand in this new paradigm, there's a lot of flexibility of doing things downstream in BigQuery, in Redshift, in Databricks, and Snowflake. But every now and then you need that preload transformation, or you need to be able to custom map things, like I mentioned earlier with the schema mapping. So that's that adaptability, that flexibility, and also the automatic schema transitions that happen when there's schema drift. That's inevitable. That's always going to happen. Your RevOps teams changes something in Salesforce. It happens. That doesn't have to completely crash your data pipelines and your whole data configuration. With Hevo, you don't have to worry about that because we automatically detect those changes and bring those over. And you can do the custom schema mapping at the table level. So you don't actually have to say, oh, this whole pipeline, you have to custom map, like I mentioned earlier, example, you have 16,000 tables. If you just need to custom map one of them, great, just custom map that one table. And again, getting into that granularity, the data transformation, this is helpful too. If you need to drop a whole column, merge two columns, do an aggregation there, great, you can do that. You can also do that with some other ETL tools like masking and not including columns that you're loading into the destination. What you can't do with other ELT tools is get down to the actual record level. If you have specific records and values that you flat out do not want that data into the destination, as an example, you can determine what that is, include that in these preload transformations with Python, and then remove that. So that data never has to leave, or never has to actually enter your data warehouse. And yeah, you can stay in compliance, or whatever the reason may be. You don't have to worry about doing that post load and setting up some job to ensure that, hey, you're dropping or removing this data. And finally, cost-effective. So cost-effective. The different features of the platform here, fully managed. Gone on and on about that pipeline observability, telling you what's going on and showing you what's happening. No code UI. I've talked about that. You don't have to do any of these Python transformations, and that's the great part about it. The vast majority of our customers just come in, set up their pipelines, and they're ready to go. 24/7 support. We have an incredible support team, always online, able to help you with whatever's going on with your account, and then dedicated architects. So we have our post-sales team as well, the sister team to sales engineers on the pre-sales side, and helping you get set up and make sure that you're ready to go and successful. So cool. Right. So that was an overview of Hevos architecture. I'm sure we had some questions about that, but I'm going to hop into the platform now and do a demo. About 8 minutes here. So, right. So now I am in the Hevo platform and I have a pipeline already set up, but I'm going to show you what it looks like to create a new pipeline. So I'm going to click here, create, and I want to do Postgres. And that's actually a really cool feature. I love this feature. I can actually copy the pipeline from an existing source that I've already created. So if the configuration is already the same, all I have to do is, as far as the credentials and everything goes, I don't have to re-enter everything all over again. I can just copy this pipeline over. It's amazing. It's super convenient, very helpful. So we have our pipeline set up there with all the details that we need. And then in this case, we're doing Postgres. So we have the option to set up our replication mode. For databases, we always recommend doing log-based. Again, that's going to be specific to databases. Postgres, I mentioned this earlier, we're doing replication, logical replication using a replication slot, MySQL, bin logs, oplog for Mongo, change tracking SQL Server, and so on. So always the default option, always the recommended option for any of these databases. We could do a whole other webinar about databases and why this is the case. So that's why that's the default option here and already selected. However, going back to some of that flexibility, sometimes that isn't, maybe you have a database hosted by a third party and they're like, no, we're not going to turn on logging for you. Or maybe you have numerous other restrictions that could prevent you from actually enabling logging on your database instance. So what are you going to do? In Hevo, we actually have the option to do table-based replication. And this one's going to be timestamp based. So if you have a timestamp column in your table, then we can use that to capture changes. We don't even have to have logs enabled. We just need read access and tell us what column to base our replication on, and we're able to do table replication here using timestamps. And finally, custom SQL. Probably the least used option here, but it's there. You can give us custom parameters. Maybe it's primary key based, it's a mix of primary key or timestamp based options for us to go in, capture this data, and do that replication. Again, we're always going to recommend logical replication, but we understand that that's not always going to fit every single use case. And so we've provided options here for our databases to be able to do different configurations that you may need to fit your exact use case. These might be edge cases. You might just need it for a few tables or so on, but Hevo's got your back here. Again, going down to, actually, let me click my option here. Some of these advanced settings, just a few other options that we have here. Load historical data. You can choose the option to skip the historical sync if you needed to. Merging tables between the same name across different schemas. Again, that's just another option to help you on that post-load side. If you don't, as far as like modeling data, we can go ahead and do that for you, and including new tables in the pipeline as they pop up in the source. So that kind of goes back into that automatic schema management. Same thing can happen for new tables. And then over here, and getting started, just built right into the UI, we have our documentation. It's going to walk you through step by step what you need to know: IPs to whitelist, configurations, user permissions, and so on. Everything that you need to know to actually set up any of these pipelines with Hevo, it's right there, built into the UI and super accessible for you. So I'm going to go back here and show you this pipeline that was already set up. And click on this one. Actually, I really love this feature. I noticed this earlier. It went away. It popped up an alert. It's like, hey, you didn't finish setting up that pipeline. It gives you the option to just trash it. So that's a really cool feature. Just sometimes it's just the small things, but it's a great part of our very intuitive UI here. So just showing you what this is a live pipeline that we have. This is a Postgres instance syncing real time into BigQuery. And in this case, with BigQuery, we're using the streaming API to write those changes automatically to BigQuery and get that real-time data flowing there. So this is an option that we do support with BigQuery, basically skipping the step of staging the data and writing directly to writing directly to the destination. So showing you the configuration here, you can enable, disable specific tables and objects. If I turn this on, I can do syncs, I can skip it, and then showing you some of the options over here. If I wanted to do a historical resync on this, edit configuration and so on, I have that ability right here in the Hevo UI. Transformations, went on about this quite a bit earlier with the preload Python transformation. Here's where it is. It's just a simple Python editor right here in the Hevo UI. This one's doing a super simple script, just checking if existing values are already there, and if they are, to not write them. But it's really up to you what you want to do with these transformations on the preload side with Python. Again, the optionality is there if you need it. Schema mapper, again, this is where you can come in, do that custom mapping for those schemas. You can select specific tables. I can say, hey, I want to reset this schema. I can turn on or off the auto mapping if I want this, or if I don't. So again, all built right in here to the UI, really straightforward, very intuitive, and very easy to use. And finally, activity log, just showing you the different user actions and operations that are going on here in Hevo with your specific pipelines. So great. And then finally, we'll go out here and show you our, go to the different destinations. You can set up different destinations, just like you can set up different sources in your Hevo account, set up different destinations. So if I click on this overview here for this BigQuery streaming, I can see what's going on, activity log for this destination itself. And you can see those user actions, what's actually going on, the different pipelines that are showing into it, and the load that's going in there. So some monitoring that's built in to the platform makes it as easy as possible to get that observability into what's going on.